long way down.
You can cover a lot of territory in 35 years and still just barely scratch the surface. We know because we've been doing that. 35 years exploring the beauty, the drama, the science of nature. In this hour-long special, we'll revisit some of the scenic wonders we've uncovered along the way, and remember the folks who have shared their stories with us over the years. And we'll give you a peek behind the curtain of the longest-running outdoor show in the West. These programs don't just happen. There are a lot of moving parts and personalities directing the action. We've changed a lot in 3.5 decades. Of course, who hasn't? Hey, welcome to our 35th anniversary special.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
Its very name suggests mystery, and its shape is like no other. The author Vardis Fisher called Idaho a state parceled from many. The 7 degrees of latitude from north to south has been a cause of many of our misunderstandings, but they're also a source of our strength. The Pacific maritime currents favor the north, bringing moisture to this land of lakes where farmers never have to irrigate their crops. But further south, it's high desert country, and life is defined by the scant 9 or 10 inches of annual rainfall. Were it not for the ingenuity of a diligent people, much of this might have remained a place to pass through on the way to other more favorable destinations. And in the middle of the state, that great barrier, the Idaho batholith, deep rock. Geologists tell us it's the product of a 100-million-year-old collision between oceanic and continental plates when Idaho was oceanfront property. Forged in a cauldron of fire, the plumes of magma from this tortured convulsion eventually cooled, and being more buoyant, slowly rose to the surface of the Earth's crust. The result is a landscape we never tire of. Geology is writ large here in this corner of the world, and if you understand the language, you can perhaps read the marks of time on the rocks, in the fields, along a mountain ridge, even in the placement and direction of rivers. Once part of a shallow sea, today Idaho is landlocked on all sides, and we are left to contemplate a topsy-turvy world where ocean fossils reside at the top of our highest peaks. Pretty much every force known to science has at some time affected this transition zone between the Pacific and the Great Plains. Glaciers from the north left rounded valleys and helped sculpt a range of sawteeth. A mere 15,000 years ago, fierce floods of biblical proportions tore through northern Idaho, leaving a 1,200-foot-deep lake. While further south, the Bonneville flood uprooted rocks and carved impressive canyons, including a waterfall higher than Niagara. Frequent, imperceptible earthquakes continue to rattle the basin and range country near Idaho's highest peak, Mount Bora. While the hot spot rising from the Earth's mantle that helped create the Snake River Plain currently flares directly under Yellowstone. This may be the best window we have for what once rocked southern Idaho. So, this is our world, our stage, our playground, our nemesis. Its rugged terrain almost defeated the intrepid Lewis and Clark expedition. And the Great Migration, decades later, gave us the world's longest graveyard. Later, this land became a resource to exploit, to tame, to break, or be broken. Today, Idaho is a crossroads of geologic and social and cultural influences. And we have been blessed to call it home. This land of distinct seasons, varied landscapes, and diverse attitudes. This place that defines us and separates us, and ultimately unites us. We are Idahoans, and this is Idaho.
There are those who say the landscape determines destiny. Could be. All I know is that Idaho's landscape has always played a major role in our shows. Hi, I'm Bruce Reichert, and welcome to Outdoor Idaho's 35th anniversary special. Our landscape does come with a lot of issues, though. After all, we're a state with a lot of public land, and the debate over the control of that land can get downright contentious.
Looking back, it may surprise folks just how many shows we've produced that center on public lands. Literally dozens. And there's a reason for that. More than 61% of Idaho is federally managed public land. To enter the Union as a state, Idaho had to renounce any claims to the federal lands within its borders. In fact, it's written into the Idaho Constitution. When Teddy Roosevelt became president, he and his chief forester, Gifford Pinchot, used the Federal Reserve Act of 1891 to expand the forests on that federal land. Idaho's share of national forests grew to more than 20 million acres. There's also nearly 12 million acres of primarily desert land administered by the Bureau of Land Management. Some people appreciate our shows precisely because we take them to these special places, places they'd likely not get to on their own. Others argue that drawing attention to these attractions only invites more people and more degradation. But sometimes building a constituency for a special place can come in handy. That was certainly the case with Castle Peak back in the 1960s and 70s. The mountain threatened by a proposed open-pit molybdenum mine at its base. Open-pit mining was a specialty of the Texas mining conglomerate ASARCO. Idaho's governor at the time was in favor of the project, and work had already begun in the White Clouds when a small group of conservationists decided to fight them with an information campaign. Ultimately, they carried the day, helping elect a governor and changing the course of Idaho politics.
I have a beautiful photo of Castle Peak framed in my home, and the caption that I have for it when people point to it, I said, yes, that's the mountain that created a governor. And it is. It gave me that edge in 1970, so that was a situation where the people got involved.
45 years later, the controversy around Castle Peak finally reached a conclusion when a unanimous Congress passed and the president signed legislation making the White Clouds an official wilderness. In March of 2017, we helped bring Cecil Andrus and Congressman Mike Simpson together for a discussion about the White Clouds, about wilderness, and compromise.
Cecil, being a Democratic governor in Idaho, you never had to compromise, did you?
Yes, but I won a lot of battles.
Yes, you did.
You count how many votes there are for your position, and if you got the horses, you run with them. If you don't, you compromise.
As this society becomes more complex and people seek outlets and ways to get out and away from the complexities of civilization, these areas are going to become more valuable in the future. So it's important that we protect these areas while we can. And that's what I'll continue to work on. because of the inspiration of all of you and these people sitting next to me.
The Idaho story is that the people care, and there's enough people to put forth the protective areas. Maybe we didn't win them all, but we haven't done too badly, and it's because of the attitude of the individual human beings, men and women in Idaho, that are willing to sit down and work together. So don't let it end. And I speak to the young people over here right now. I'll be long gone, but there'll be more of that out there that has to be protected. Thanks, Bruce.
That was the last public event featuring the congressman and the governor. And for those who were there, it was a recognition that wilderness is not a Democrat or a Republican idea. Of course, Idahoans had already witnessed an example of how setting aside special places with special protections can cut across party lines. It took nearly 10 years, but it happened in southern Idaho's Owyhee Canyonlands, when a group of ranchers, enviros, and others worked to find common ground with the assistance of Republican Senator Mike Crapo. Today we know it as the Owyhee Initiative, and buried within its pages are 6 new wilderness areas, slowly and methodically agreed upon by folks who had once viewed each other with great suspicion and distrust.
I don't think that there are words to describe how happy I am at the outcome here. I do believe that Idaho is leading the nation. This has become recognized nationally as a model.
That same collaborative process is alive and well in northern Idaho. Locals have been trying for years to get to a resolution on protecting Scotchman Peaks above beautiful Lake Pend Oreille. If Idahoans ever do add more acreage to the wilderness ledger, it's likely to be here in Bonner County, making it the Panhandle's first official wilderness.
For me, it really started with the Henry's Fork Watershed Council, when irrigators and fly fishermen got together and they realized that they were former enemies and now they were actually friends, and it worked for them. More importantly, they had a chance to advance both of their agendas. And that was a revolutionary thing at the time. But because of their success, people around the state in both camps started to see the opportunity. We love public lands. Even people who think we should transfer it to the state don't want to lose it. I think you will see much more innovation, much more creativity as time goes on.
But the worry is that this Bundy issue is festering. The federal prosecutors, in my view, blew that. But he still owes over $1 million for not paying his grazing fees. And his odd constitutional theory about the feds have no right to it is just nonsensical garbage. Hopefully this creates an opportunity for Secretary Zinke to move that in a different direction before this gets worse.
Who is not fascinated by Idaho's fish of legend? The journey of these ocean-going fish is surely one of the great migrations on the planet. But in 1992, only one sockeye salmon returned to Redfish Lake. They called him Lonesome Larry. The species has since rebounded and also suffered setbacks. Our 2012 program, Idaho's Salmon, happened to coincide with one of the best runs in a generation. Enough fish that many were allowed to spawn naturally in Redfish Lake. There seems little political appetite to remove the 4 most recent dams on the Snake River. And that's what most scientists say needs to happen to improve the future of these salmon runs. But will it be enough? Salmon will still need to contend with an uncertain, changing ocean environment. In our hour-long special, 50 Years of Wilderness, we visited each and every wilderness area in the state. All told, Idaho's wilderness areas comprise more than 4.7 million acres. Only California and Alaska have more. Most of us probably can't name all of Idaho's wilderness areas, But many of us have at least heard the description of wilderness written into the 1964 Wilderness Act. An area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. But what about mountain bikes? We raised that very question in our 2014 show. Turns out, even among mountain bikers themselves, there is no clear agreement on that question. But now it's likely to become an issue in future wilderness debates. Already there is legislation pending that would allow mountain bikes on trails in wilderness areas, like the White Clouds.
What's amazing to me as a scholar of this is the pablum that comes out from some of the people sponsoring this, that this was the intent of the original Wilderness Act. There is nothing in the Wilderness Act that even suggests something like a mountain bike would be an acceptable use. It shows you how people have changed, that people view open space and wilderness differently. People who look at everything as a thrill experience. They're for opening wilderness for mountain bikes, as far as I understand. It's a cultural change that's really odd to me, but that does happen.
You're looking at the aftermath of the Pioneer Fire, Idaho's most recent large-scale burn. Almost 200,000 acres. The fire began in July of 2016 and was officially declared out on November 3rd. 1 year later, and these loggers are racing against time, trying to salvage some of this timber while it still has value. Roger Jackson and Todd Niehoff work together. In many ways, they represent the yin and yang of logging. Jackson is 77, and he's still out here. His name isn't on the truck anymore, but he can run these machines with the best of them. He's also in his third term as Boise County Commissioner. Boise County took the brunt of the Pioneer Fire.
There's probably a couple billion feet that burned up. But it's going to be bad for Boise County for the next years and years and years, because there's nothing here.
We hate to see a burn, but it did provide us a job. I'm only a half hour away from home, which is not normal because I live away from home for the last 25 years. So I'm very happy to be up here, but unfortunately our backyard had burnt up here and had almost 200,000 acres. It's just a shame.
Jackson says the Forest Service moved quickly to complete the required environmental review to get loggers out here working. But he says it wasn't quick enough. Wood-boring insects moved in, infesting much of the wood.
This is where the boar went in. Now watch, when I pull the sawdust out of here, there's another one. There's what, 20 holes right there? I mean, I've never seen that many in my life. I've been logging a long time.
The mills aren't interested in timber infested by borers, so a lot of this will end up as firewood. And some will become poles for hops growers in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. But still, Todd Niehoff is counting his blessings. He and his father-in-law are one of the smaller operations in the state. They do both harvesting and trucking, and bid on timber sales that the larger companies don't bother with. Niehoff figures he's got enough work from this fire to keep him busy for several years.
My hat goes off to the Boise National Forest. They put this together extremely quickly. They snowshoed in, they snowmobiled in to mark and cruise timber to have this ready and to put some sales together this spring.
The Boise National Forest averages about 125 fires a year, most of them lightning-caused because of the way storms track through these mountains. In fact, in the last 20 years, half of this forest's 2.6 million acres has burned. Foresters like to call the Boise National a fire forest.
I think what the change for us is that we are getting fires earlier and they're staying later. So our season itself has really expanded. And so what that means for us on the ground is that when we get a fire start, it's very likely that that's going to be a long-term fire. And so to me, that's what we prepare for in our mind.
But 200,000 acres?
Reforestation. This is what we're going to have for reforestation throughout Pioneer.
We met up with
We'll
Idaho
cover
City
this
Ranger Brant Peterson while touring the restoration efforts 1 year after the fire. And he offered this explanation of what happened out here.
The question that's often asked is, how does a fire, with the amount of resources you bring, the money that you have at your disposal, how does that happen? What went wrong? And I think the answer to that is really told in this map. This is 30,000 acres in a burn shift. And when you talk about 30,000 acres, that's not an acreage that there is a plan, irregardless of the amount of resources you had at your disposal, that you could suppress a fire that burns 30,000 acres in a day. It is not possible. And unfortunately, if you took those big burn blobs off this map, it wouldn't be a big fire. And that really speaks to how these fires and how these 100,000 acres fires burn. It isn't, 20 days and 10,000 acres a day. It's literally a few days and massive spreads. And what we do in between those days is really critical.
There were some places that did manage to avoid the devastation, like here at the Pine Flats Campground, along the South Fork of the Payette River.
The fire front, when it did come, it actually hit this full force. There wasn't any protection here because it was at the fire front, so there wasn't any engines in here with water actually spraying down the picnic tables and trying to protect this because they were pulled to safety.
What saved this area was the work done before the fire. Crews had thinned the trees in 2011 and then followed up a year later with a prescribed burn.
Every time we thin a place down like that, it gives it a chance to make it through a wildfire. And that's what I think is happening here is we're not treating enough acres of this landscape to stop this from happening. We have a fire that created its own weather, its own winds. 300 feet were nothing for that thing. It just went, phew, and it just kept going.
The rain and snows of October and November finally put an end to the Pioneer Fire. But the restoration work had begun long before then. In places like Clear Creek outside of Lowman, foresters used helicopters to spread straw in the upper reaches of the tributaries and watersheds, where soil could potentially slide down the mountain and affect bull trout and other valuable forest assets.
So far, the straw is in place, the hill slopes are revegetating, and we don't see a lot of these tributaries blowing out in a large way. My wife asked me last night, what do I do? And I said, well, so my overall job is to protect, preserve, or restore watersheds on the forest, right? So this is part of doing that.
The repercussions of this fire will be with us for a long time, as dead standing trees start falling in a few years.
Oh man, I think we've done probably 400 miles of roadside hazard. You know, if you look at all these roads out here, we hardly have scratched the surface.
So what are some of the lessons from this particular fire? And what does it say about the future? Certainly one takeaway is that Forest Service doesn't have the workforce it once had to do the work that needs to be done.
Boy, we wore them out. We really wore them out. And what I would try and think about next time, is there a different way to organize ourselves to accomplish the work so that it doesn't come so heavily on people?
But some suggest the problems are, well, more complicated than that.
There's such a shortage in our infrastructure anymore. To find the log trucks to haul it, that's a real hard thing. So you start there. And they don't have anybody in the wings coming up because nobody wants to do this. And who's doing it? Who's going to do it 20 years from now?
Still, the forest supervisor believes some good things happened out here with this fire.
When I think about the Pioneer Fire, we're in a good place for the restoration effort. We had a public that was very interested. We had partners that were really engaged. We had a group of employees that were dedicated to the effort to make things happen. And everybody was willing to do their part. That's why we were able to do what we're doing out there on the landscape right now, is because we all believed in a common goal.
What I have been most amazed about is how authentic the show really is. There's not a lot of staging of the scene or how somebody interacts with you. It's all, you're able to bring out the real character of people, and therefore I think you're bringing out the real character of how we as Idahoans interact with this amazing place that we live.
So they're so conscientious about what they're looking at and what they're showing us and the stories that they tell. And it's just Idaho. It's who we are, and it's wonderful. We love it.
My wife likes the shows with all the places that she's never gone before. She always says that would be a great place to take the dog.
I'll tell you what Outdoor Idaho means to me. All these years, I have not gone on vacation, and last year I went to Hawaii. The place is beautiful, but because of you guys, I kept seeing all these places in Idaho, and I said, why leave? So I stayed here for 35 years. All these opportunities are out there, so thanks a lot, guys.
My family's been here for a long time, 7 generations to be exact. We homesteaded out south of Hanson in the Magic Valley, and we didn't even realize all the things that there were to do. So Outdoor Idaho has been able to really kind of dig in and show us all these different things.
For me, Outdoor Idaho it's kind of like getting a peek into heaven, but it's still up to you to get there.
Every Outdoor Idaho starts with a vision, one that comes alive after months in production. It takes a dedicated team to keep a show on the air for 35 years, photographers, editors, producers, and writers. Here's a look at where we've been and where we might be going. With Bruce Reichert at the helm for 33 of Outdoor Idaho's 35 years, the show navigates the rough waters of public policy, diving into hot topics like fire management, salmon, wilderness, water, and wolves.
As soon as you allow the premise that wolves have a place in the ecosystem, you're going to get pushback from folks who think the only good wolf is a dead wolf. More than 20 years later, a lot of folks believe that maybe wolves are not going to destroy the balance of nature. And I think many Idahoans believe that with proper management, wolves do have a place in Idaho.
Bruce's unique ability to examine the issues and deliver an unbiased report has gained the respect and admiration of his peers and the trust of our audience.
We'd like to say that Outdoor Idaho tells Idaho stories, and that comes with an obligation to be fair and to be comprehensive. Let's face it, nobody's going to watch a show that's boring, especially for 35 years. And so we try to put a face to public affairs issues. You've got to keep it interesting.
With nearly 300 shows in the can, Outdoor Idaho has won just about every award in television for excellence in production, including the highly coveted Edward R. Murrow Award, 16 Emmys, and dozens of other national and local television competitions. People behind the scenes have come and gone over the years, but a few remain constant, giving the show consistency and integrity.
We've got a team that I think is some of the best in the West. The show has continued to grow. It has continued to evolve. I think the show has really found its niche.
This is Outdoor Idaho, October.
It all started back in 1983 as a co-production between Idaho Department of Fish and Game and Idaho Public Television. Producer-director Peter Morrill and writer Royce Williams of Fish and Game brought stories of the great outdoors to life by taking cameras to the source. Hosted from the studio, those early shows were produced on a shoestring budget and by the seat of the pants. But they had a lot of heart, and people started to tune in.
We wanted to get across to the public that wildlife management is extremely complicated. You can rarely ever be precise about what you've got out there. And I think people thought we should be more precise than we were, but we wanted to show them how difficult that was. And we managed to do that.
And because of the very, very tight budgets, we could really only get out into the field a few times each month, and we had to essentially fill the rest of the time with studio interviews. And then when we got support after about a year, we were able to get out into the field a lot more and really make it truly an Outdoor Idaho.
Hello,
I'm Bruce Reichert.
In 1985, a young Bruce Reichert took over as host of the show.
Hey, Sean.
By this time, Outdoor Idaho had moved out of the studio and was shot entirely on location around the state. New faces joined the crew by the late 1980s as Peter and Royce moved on to new adventures out of Idaho. There seemed to be plenty of talent to pick up the ball and keep the show going. But the camera gear, well, that was another story.
Video equipment back in the 80s was not built for what we were using it for. We were really pushing the boundaries, you know, going up to the top of Mount Bora or crossing the Frank Church River of No Return back then was really hard stuff. And compared to what we can get now, you really have to say, wow, we've come a long ways.
By 1990, Idaho Fish and Game and Idaho Public Television decided to part ways. Bruce took over as lead producer-writer of the show, and I continued as the director, videographer, editor.
Hi, I'm Bruce Reichert, and welcome to beautiful and incredibly deep Lake Pend Oreille.
The first Outdoor Idaho, produced solely by Idaho Public Television, debuted in May of that year.
The show evolved immediately from a magazine-style format to a thematic show. In other words, one topic per show. That's the big thing that changed as far as the viewers were concerned.
Other staff producers and videographer editors eventually pitched in, contributing a story here or a show there. But the constant over the years has always been Bruce as host and executive producer and the lead director videographer. Pat Messler took the director reins when I stepped away from the show after 5 years. He is still with the show, editing award-winning programs like 50 Years of Wilderness and Beyond the White Clouds. Each crew member has a specialty or niche that makes them shine. In these days, Pat's expertise is focused in the edit bay. With technology constantly changing, an editor's job has become much more challenging.
Nonlinear editing in particular has really changed what we did. You know, it used to be you'd spend most of your time actually editing. Now you spend at least half of your time getting things ready, getting things into the system. The editing has kind of become a right brain, left brain thing where, you know, now all of a sudden we have to be good at both. You still have to be creative because you're an editor and you're kind of overseeing the final product that people see when they're watching at home, but it's all about problem solving. With that technology, it's just every day there's some other obstacle that you have.
Another big change since the show began is the use of the web to connect with our audience.
I think one of the things that I found really touching about the Outdoor Idaho Facebook page is all the people who have left the state and who are using that page as a way to connect with their former state. I can't tell you how many times they'll write on the page and say, I really miss Idaho. I wish I could come back. For whatever reason, they can't, and so it's become really their touchstone with a part of their past that they really miss.
We call JR Mountain Goat. He's the one who can bring home footage from places that only Mountain Goat could get to. And part of his mystique is his ability to carry heavy loads of camera gear long distances, even up steep mountains.
I work out to stay in good shape for this job because I know that there are a lot of physical challenges for it. Preparing to go hike to a peak for a shoot is a little overwhelming sometimes because you have your own personal gear, you have the professional gear, you've got the batteries, the cards, the tapes, the camera, the tripod, the microphones, and then your sleeping bag and all this other stuff that you got to carry. And so you want to be as light as possible, but still you want to have enough stuff to make sure if it's raining, you're going to be covered and you're going to be protected.
There's Mr. GoPro.
Another longtime contributor to the show is John Crancer. He's delivered stories and shows for over 2 decades, taking us to some of his favorite places in Idaho, like Owyhee Canyonlands in North Idaho. John's passion for running wild rivers has given us some pretty amazing footage over the years, like this wreck on the Jarbidge a few years ago. John also loves a good horsepacking trip and has taken cameras to all parts of Idaho on horseback and mule. His sense of adventure and love of travel helps us get to all corners of the state. And he's even worn out a few cars on the way.
That's a beautiful sound, isn't it?
I'm just curious. When I returned to Outdoor Idaho as a producer, writer, editor after 12 years away, I found new adventures and stories to add to the lineup with shows like Climbing Idaho, Summit Idaho, Middle Earth, and Wild Horses. People who push themselves to accomplish amazing feats of physical and mental endurance have always intrigued me. And now with smaller cameras and lighter gear, we can follow them to places we never could before. Today I leave the camera work to others. I need to focus on the logistics and details of the shoot, conduct the interviews, and most importantly, feed the crew. Because once we get home, there are no redos. Logging hours of footage, writing a script, and working through the post-production editing process is the most labor-intensive part of finishing a show. We spend weeks in the edit bay sorting through sound bites and video, wordsmithing narratives, and then whittle here and there to fit the time slot perfectly. It's a true team effort to get a show on the air. Today's Outdoor Idaho crew have put in some time on the show. The hair is graying and our bodies are starting to rebel a little.
Big rock's turning, about broke my ankle.
But whatever our age bracket, we've always dared ourselves to climb the tallest mountains.
This is the one nice thing about long legs.
Descend into the deepest caves or raft the wildest rivers to bring these stories home to our viewers. We all have an adventure streak anyway, so it's not like anybody really had to twist our arms. But getting Bruce to jump out of an airplane, now that took some convincing.
Hold it down, hold it down. Let up the left one, let it up. Hold it down.
But seriously, putting together an Outdoor Idaho show takes quite a bit of planning and strategizing. You have to look at the weather, the road conditions, forest or range fire hazards, smoke from fire, etc., etc. We have places to go and people to meet. And hopefully that crystal ball Jay got was right about the weather this time. Oh well, wrong again. But we always manage to bring home a good story. Sometimes a completely different story than the one we set out to get. But that's not always a bad thing.
I love going out when the threat of storms are there. Just because you can get some amazing light after a storm or after it's cloudy, and yeah, it's beautiful sometimes.
Yours in, go Peter.
After 35 years, we can't really say what the future holds. But I'm pretty sure this crew, or a new one, will still be climbing to some summit somewhere in Outdoor Idaho.
We gonna make it to the top, Jeff?
Yes.
It's cold. Here comes the horse and buggy.
Full of air. Get my nose running.
Come on. Patience for Outdoor Idaho.
I like to think of Outdoor Idaho as a mirror that reflects the richness and the diversity.
So when I think of Outdoor Idaho, the first thing to me that comes to mind is just the beautiful cinematography. I think it takes you to places that you probably will never see in your lifetime.
You're bringing nature right into people's homes. So I want to salute you for that. And you're also affecting, the next generation of young people getting out here.
And we'll often get on the phone or on email and say, hey, did you see that episode of Outdoor Idaho? Dad, did you ever fish that stream? And it might bring back memories for him, and then I will want to go experience it myself.
They're all motivated people. They're
so dedicated and they're so genuine about their role of producing a quality program. It's not something that they look at as like, I gotta do this to get my paycheck. It's, I wanna do this.
And so you've become an alternate repository, and in that way, a very valuable aspect to saving Idaho's history.
Favorite interview, huh? It's kind of tough. I always enjoyed talking with Forest Ranger Bud Moore, poet Bill Studebaker, Butch Otter, C. Sanders, but the one who could always make me smile was Master Falconer Morley Nelson. Morley was actually in our first show back in October of 1983. He had more energy than 3 people.
I can't get him in the frame.
I got to know his 2 sons, Beeve and Ty, both filmmakers and falconers like their dad. And when the 3 of them got together, watch out. It was always interesting. Morley knew the Snake River Canyon like no one else. He knew how the eagles depended upon the ground squirrels and the jackrabbits, which depended upon the deep soil and the sagebrush. In fact, he coined the phrase, the vertical environment, to describe all that.
The vertical environment is one of the most spectacular in the world. The young birds learning to fly and diving and putting on this tremendous ability that they have to live is all right there going on if you're on the vertical environment. That when this bird is protecting its nest, if a grizzly bear came, she would fly out and say to the grizzly bear, it's either you or me, and she'd take him right by the nose and either get rid of him or die trying.
You know, people used to shoot golden eagles and prairie falcons for fun. Well, Morley Nelson changed all that. He's no longer with us, but his name lives on officially in the Morley Nelson Snake River Birds of Prey National Conservation Area.
A few years ago, I ran across an old film from the 60s about 4 guys who climbed Mount Fitzroy, a very gnarly granite peak in southern Patagonia at the tip of South America. This was only the 3rd ascent of the mountain, so it was a pretty big deal at the time in the climbing world. 2 of those climbers later became pretty famous guys, Yvon Chouinard and Doug Tompkins, the founders of Patagonia North Face. But one of the other climbers, a ski racer named Dick Dorworth, kind of went off to do his own thing as an adventurer and an author, and then ended up making Sun Valley his home. And that's where we met up with him to hear his story.
I wasn't even supposed to go on the climb. When we started the trip, I was going to carry loads and then sit in base camp. And I convinced Yvon, who was the leading climber, that we could do this. So essentially, Doug and Yvon did the leading, and Chris and I kept care of Lito so he could make the film. And that's how it worked. A lot of times I would be the last guy up, and I'd be out there by myself on the side of Fitzroy, knowing very little about that kind of alpine adventure. So it was quite spooky.
Maybe what impressed me the most about that trip was how they were able to pull off that shoot, carrying all that heavy film gear to the top of the mountain and back. And Dick Dorworth was a really important part of that mission. Today, that film is still an epic adventure story.
Last year, we were sent off to explore small towns at the end of the road, and I went up to Atlanta. And I knew a little bit about the place beforehand, but I ended up learning a lot about myself in an interview with Alan Ireland.
All these things in modern society that we've tried to get away from with our shelter, you know, our houses, our cars, you might have a little patch of flowers or something, you know, but here you walk through it. It touches your arms when you're walking through it.
Alan really made me think about not just how I affect nature and how nature affects me, but how those 2 things kind of merge at a certain point.
I'm really attracted to people who have lived a life, who've lived a purposeful life, who've lived an intentional life, who've lived a life of passion. And I can think back to one of my earliest interviews for Outdoor Idaho, which was with Olive Purcell, known as Ollie by her friends and family. And she's a cowpuncher, a person who herds cows and takes care of them up outside of Midvale, Idaho. More than 20 years later, I still can hear her voice in my head.
Way up there.
Way up high, I can hear her saying.
Way high.
She would say things that were very simply worded, but very profound.
I watch these people, educated people at their jobs. They're so, want to see Friday come so bad so they can get away. That just don't appeal to me at all. I never wanted to get famous or never wanted to get rich. I just wanted to get along.
She definitely got along. She got along with her cows, she got along with the people around her, they respected her for what she did. And I think in the end, for most of us, that's how we'd want to be remembered.
Here now, leave him alone.
My favorite Outdoor Idaho interview is Chuck Kavanaugh. He's nearly 100 years old, and he's the poster boy for a life well lived in Idaho's outdoors. For our show, Palisades by Season, he collected huckleberries in a coffee can.
They're sweet, real super sweet and very nutritious.
And for Still Kickin', he hunts grouse with little Jack Russell Terriers through the snow.
Out in the hills every day, it don't hurt you a bit.
He teaches me more about our natural resources than I would ever figure out on my own.
So we climbed Old Hindman with Bill Manny and his daughter and a friend for our show Into the Pioneers. And of the whole crew of 6, I was probably the least experienced on that climb. It was a real challenge for me, but I made it to the top. So at the end of the day, I was pretty exhausted. And then I sat down to interview Bill. And he was so enthusiastic about how much he loves backpacking and loves climbing and loves Idaho and loves the Pioneers.
The beauty of the Pioneers is it's a fairly small range, and when you're in the center of it like we were today, you can see so much. You can see from Sun Valley to practically Montana, and it's just a gorgeous place to get a really good introduction to Idaho mountaineering, everything from creeks and pastures to high mountain bouldering.
When I think about that shoot, I don't think about how painful it was or how tired I was. I think about Bill's genuine love for the outdoors and how some of that really rubbed off on me.
So the most interesting interview I think I've done for Outdoor Idaho is for the salmon show, and that was with Judge James Redden, who presided over the salmon case for the better part of 2 decades. And one of the things that really stands out to me is he has never granted an interview like this before. And because of such, when it was learned that we had done this particular interview, it made news. It was pretty big. The big headline that shouted out to you was what James Redden said was, I think for the betterment of these salmon, we need to tear down those lower Snake River dams.
I think we need to take those dams down. The best thing we could do, the only thing we could do, is the spills. And that made it a river. And the more the spills, the more the fish. And I think that saved the salmon to a certain extent, and it's got to be more. It's not enough.
I think people will look back at this interview that we've done with Judge James Redden many, many, many years down the road and see why salmon are important to the Pacific Northwest and the type of effort that went in to help protect this very precious species.
I love the outdoors, but I'm not a mountain climber. But the person I interviewed who was the most interesting was Paul Petzold, who was probably America's premier mountain climber. Paul was 16 when he first climbed the Grand Teton, and he went on to pioneer most of the mountain climbing techniques we find today. And we had a chance to start our interview by taking a chairlift ride to the top of the mountain at the Grand Teton Ski Resort, and that was a place that was really special for him to do the interview.
Yeah, this is my backyard. That's really a good way of describing it. It's my backyard, and I came here as a teen, and this is where I grew up. Somebody said that I climbed it 400 times. I think maybe that's too many. I know one time I climbed it 7 times in 7 days because everybody wanted me as a guide, so I just stayed timberline and let Glenn Exum or some of the people I was training bring them up to me. I'd say, bring up the victims. I'll take them on up to the top.
What made Paul Petzold so great was his passion, the passion for finding that new route up the mountain, or that passion for training someone, and his love of the outdoors and his appreciation, the importance of the outdoors. just left a lasting impact on me and the rest of the world.
Over the years, we've been fortunate to meet and interview some wonderful folks who always taught us something about the state and the land. You've met some of them already. Here are a few more who have passed on that we were honored to call friends.
Had we not passed that bill at that time, you would be looking wall-to-wall development in this valley. I think maybe one can say the good Lord was with us on this one, and we have preserved and will for all time one of the greatest scenic treasures on the earth.
Borah was a great senator for Idaho. Of course, a Republican, but Frank always thought he did the right things for Idaho. And he always was a little bit jealous that he had a mountain named after him. And he said to me, rather sweetly, just that last month before he died, he said, well, Bethine, I now have a lot of mountains and a lot of rivers. He said, I've really got a very special place. And then he grinned at me.
The thing we don't have yet is the public trust. Just how in the blazes can a ranger run a show with the public fighting each other? The public he's supposed to be working for. The lumber industry, the outfitting industry, you just go on and name them. The environmental groups. How can you do it? This is a democracy and you're just stalemated until we join up a little bit. Working together works.
I built my first aluminum jet boat in 1970. It's addictive. It's a beautiful, pristine area. With me at least, when I boated up here in the early days, and I didn't get to do nearly as much as I wanted, I couldn't wait to get back. The rapids, the different water levels, to me are extremely challenging, and I really enjoy the challenge.
Well, I guess it's just a feeling that one has to do what one feels must be done. Idaho is so singular in having this wonderful, untouched world, and let's take care of it, or we'll be just like the other part of the country, denuded and wondering where to go next to get our soul back.
This is gorgeous. There is sun, there's mountains that are just exposed off in the distance with the sun on them in a vignette in this shot that is just, again, totally unexpected. It's just amazing. Gorgeous.
I tell people when we're discussing our outfit that we've put together that I could have written a letter to Santa Claus and we'd have received just what we have now. We have been so fortunate, and I'm reluctant to use the word blessed, but I believe there's a place there for that to fit in if one chose to use it.
Oh, I cherish the memories. They put a life to the canyon. Those people are not being replaced. As they, Hank the Hermit, they put a match to his building just as quick as they could get there after he died. So they're destroying some of those things so that we don't have them, even the buildings, for posterity.
This is the city no one built. Each monolith and boulder is crafted by wind and water. For convenience, all the streets run downhill and disappear in the distance. Right now, hawks are out, tag teaming your lunch. Raven, rabbit, and coyote are wandering wherever you go. And the silence is the sound of flowers, purple-eyed mariposa, penstemon, and paintbrush, especially paintbrush, applying more color.
Can you feel my sense of home? Where the bluebird flies at the break of dawn, where the road becomes a river bend, but there are deeper valleys and taller mountains. This wild state, it has nothing to prove. This old Idaho is our home, and it's where the wind blows. Can you hear the forest wake? I smell the mountain pines in their younger age. An antelope can grow up lean and tall, and of the strength and grace we can hear the call. Got a bluebird in my heart. This old Idaho is our home, and it's where the wind blows. Cuts a ring of flowers and watch the morning fade into dark hours. This old Idaho is our home, and it's where the wind blows.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment. To find more information about these shows, visit us at idahoptv.org.